Hi there, I'm Jon Zirkle, director at Bushelcraft Farm. We're an educational farm on County Road 26, right next door to the big Southgate Farmers Market building. I tell people 4 miles west of Target and Aldi and all that stuff, Meijer. It's been a pleasure to work with the city too, in partnership with an urban forestry grant project and promoting the growing of our tree canopy here, Elkhart County and Elkhart as well, and underserved areas with low canopies. And today I have the honor to talk about one of my favorite topics and favorite trees and foods, pawpaw, also known as Hoosier banana. There's lots of other common folk names for pawpaw, but raise your hand if you have eaten a pawpaw before. It's fine if you have not. All right, I know who I'm going to come find later this season. Love it, hate it, kind of weirded out. I don't know, love it. It's okay. Some people really have like issues with the texture. If you're not into like creamy fruits, may not be the favorite, but anybody have a personal history with this from childhood or some sort of nostalgia around pawpaws? Just curious. Well, I bring this up because I've been into growing pawpaws and foraging them for a while as an adult. Never came up when I was a kid, but I would always go camping in my great-grandparents' woods, where, lo and behold, there was pawpaw. Didn't know anything about it. And just a few years ago, my dad was like, "Oh, you mean those green things we used to throw at each other?" So apparently they would have like sloppy, mushy pawpaw fights in the woods, but he never had tried it. Just blew my mind that they'd been like slopping them, but nobody had ever tried it, and they thought they were just terrible or something. But so I want to bring in some of the folk aspects of pawpaw. Not only is it a great tree to be planting in our region, but there's history, it's really tasty, and there's lots of culinary ways to experiment with pawpaw that I'd like more people to know about. And there's some interesting, art about it. It's a beautiful tree. It just looks good in the landscape, whether you're into the fruit so much or not. It's good for wildlife and pollinators and other things. So here's what I intend to cover. Talk a little bit about its habitat and natural history, like where do you find pawpaw in the U.S., a little bit about its tree biology. I'm trying to not go too deep into that for those who just want to skim the surface. I'll talk about my own personal history growing pawpaw here in Goshen and how that got started. Welcome. And you're welcome to have a piece of pawpaw bread if you want. Of course, including lots of photos. I feel like photos say more than the words do on a screen oftentimes. And I have to talk about the culinary aspects, ways to eat pawpaw fruit. And I'll leave you with a number of resources and links at the end. So hopefully this can be shared. You don't have to feel like you catch it all now. I have worked for a land trust in my previous work, which got me out on farms with woods. And it's really neat just to see where all pawpaw shows up in northern Indiana and southern Michigan. If you can see in the bottom left corner, those dark big leaves, so that's understory pawpaw. This is primarily a maple forest in Huntington County. But it's got a lovely, beautiful big leaf, dark green foliage tendency. Anybody see thickets of it in your area? Or I know, right? Camp Friedenswald, for anyone who's been up there, there's quite a bit of it there. But it makes a pretty interesting understory. This is also from Huntington County and near a stream. And I just love that foliage this time of year. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see big pawpaw leaves come out again. But it really is winter, right? It's very tropical looking, right? I feel like, I don't know, Nolan, you're shaking your head. Like, have you seen it and been surprised by it looking very tropical?
I just didn't know about it until working here. I've probably seen it, but it does, it does strike me as more tropical-ish looking because of the letter leaves.
So when you find a patch, Yeah, it feels kind of like you've found this little jungle here, and I just think it's lovely. Here's a map of its historic range. So we're at the northern, pretty close to its northern edge, but it does go into Michigan, even Southwest Ontario, um, and yeah, so I actually don't. This is a U.S. Forest Service map, but it is its only species that's not tropical. So this plant family, most of the species are in the tropics. Has anybody ever had soursop or guanabana? Have you ever been to Tropicana here in Goshen? They serve ice cream, soursop. It's white flesh, but first time I went in there, I was like, oh, it'll be like the powdered kind. It had like the real black seeds in it. So anyways, that's another plant in this family, but almost all of them are tropical. I spent a semester in college in Belize, and soursop guanabana was very popular down there, but it has bumps on the fruit. So similar fruit, but when you eat a pawpaw, it tastes tropical. It's hard to believe it's like American pawpaw. But you can see it also goes pretty far south, and it's really beloved in Appalachia. So a lot of Appalachian communities really know this. I used to sell at the farmer's market, and a woman who grew up in Arkansas, I was just meeting a lot of interesting Southern folk in town, and she was saying how like their pigs like fattened up on pawpaw. Like they would just let the pigs loose in the woods in the fall in Arkansas, and like it's really nutritious. Yeah.
My son Alex Caskey started to cultivate pawpaw way up in the northeast corner of New York.
Oh, really?
And he's working at tree migration.
Oh, yeah, you told.
So he got his first successful fruits.
Really?
This last summer for the first time.
Okay. Well, I was going to say this is a historic range, and I mean we're towards the north. I believe it that it's gonna, and especially I hear New England and is warming faster than some other areas, but it likes the low, near streams, ravines, areas that often might be a little more moderated anyways, rather than a big open field.
It's such a wide range. Why is it known as an Indiana banana?
I think that's more of the folky, like, we don't grow bananas in the U.S. in general, but it has a banana flavor, right? So, right?
I just thought, why was, I know it resembles a banana, but I didn't know why the Indiana.
Maybe it's just because it really can grow anywhere in our state. So, I mean, north to south, you'll find it here in southern Indiana. But yeah, it's kind of like, how did the name Hoosier come about? I mean, you'll hear like 5 different stories on that, right? I find it interesting. I didn't know some of this, but of course, indigenous folks of various tribes have used pawpaw medicinally, for a food source, for fiber. If you've ever trimmed a pawpaw, the bark comes off and peels in a really interesting way. Apparently, it made great cord and rope, or for drying fish, hanging fish to dry. And it's a really bendy tree. It's very Jungle Book kind of feel to it. And probably not like an amazingly timber-oriented tree, right? It's pretty a short tree, but really nutrient dense. And so there's a lot of stories about ways that indigenous folks graciously helped feed settlers going west. You know, Lewis and Clark expedition, they say they found pawpaw all along the rivers as they went west, even into the plain states. And I think Potawatomi and other tribes nearby dry fruit. So you can dry it, and that's really nutrient dense, you know, getting through the winter. It's actually got some fat in it. Lots of micro and macronutrients. But the seeds are interesting too. I believe some native peoples have used it for art or decoration. It's a beautiful seed. I've actually got some. I could pass this around if you want to see some wet seed examples. They're like a huge flat coffee bean, right? But what else was I going to say? Yeah, it's never been a shelf-stable fruit, and I like that. I feel like it's always going to be that wild fruit that we're not going to Krogerize pawpaw anytime soon. So better foraged or grown in small quantities. And I thought I'd give a shout out to some of my own heroes. So I first tasted a pawpaw in college in a botany class, and I went to Calvin College in Grand Rapids. So again, that's at the very northern part of its range. And we found pawpaws. It was a fall semester class. We found one hanging on a tree along Plaster Creek in Grand Rapids. And our whole class like cut it up into a million pieces so we could all try it. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so good. But Dave Warners is an amazing botany professor, if you haven't heard him speak. And Jerry Lehman, who, bless him, he died in 2020. He was the Indiana expert on pawpaw. And his grafted material, his varieties are showing up in nurseries all over the place now. So if you see Jerry Lehman, yes, Mennonite name, but he's in Terre Haute. He was in Terre Haute, 35 acres of persimmon and pawpaw trees. And even though his wife is still around, I believe, he left a legacy behind. And I learned from him, and I went camping in his orchard once. You could hear fruit falling. Awesome guy. And he's holding the award for the Ohio Pawpaw Festival, largest pawpaw award, which he would win that award many years. And so he's kind of a self-taught botanist. He was a Motorola engineer, but he just self-taught himself all kinds of genetics. I had a microscope in his house and all kinds of stuff. So this is from his orchard when I visited 13, 14 years ago. You can see kind of the shape of some of his trees, and planted them, I think, probably 20 feet apart in rows, but they've filled out nicely. And I believe his kind of living nursery still carries on. So just to go through some of the basic details that you would know, it's generally never going to be more than 25 or 30 feet tall. You might find some in the woods that are maybe slightly taller than that are really reaching for light in a dense area. But everybody asks, how long from planting till I get fruit? My experience was 6 years here in Goshen. I think that's fairly common. I wouldn't say it's a real fast grower, but I wouldn't say it's like the slowest. And if you buy grafted, you might have a little bit of a boost on that. It depends what size you buy from or you start with. But yield will be small at first, several pounds. I'd say most fruits might weigh 2 to 7 or 8 ounces at the most. That's an award winner if it's half a pound. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Everybody wants that. But and it will grow in our zones. Ripening, it depends on variety, but I would say you'll see the fruits hanging on the tree in August. I mean, they'll be forming in July. Late August is probably the earliest ripening till into October. Depends what kind of fall we have typically. And the fruit should be fine even if there's like a light frost. But the wildlife love them, so they are sniffing for them to ripen up as soon as. But I don't want to discourage people from trying. Like, you can still get them. We get plenty of them. Just you don't let them fall on the ground too long, or they will be immediately snatched up by something. Big question about full sun versus shade. They grow along the millrace. They grow in deep shade areas in the wild. If you're growing them in your yard and you're growing them for fruit, I would give them more sun. And most of the varieties that one would grow from can handle probably more sun than the wild types. Some would say to give some shade for the first year or two as they're getting started. So if you have really sunny, wide open yard space, that could be some stakes or some sort of diffuse shading. I didn't actually do that. My yard's fairly sunny, but I do have a garage that gives maybe like late afternoon shade. But and again, they can be started from seed. I seed save every year, and now I have thousands of seed from my trees in the backyard. And so it's you can just start another round or you can do grafting. And uses I'll get into later, but there's a lot of good uses, whether fresh, baked, frozen. Yeah, so it's native to our region. Something I really like is it is not one that has many diseases and pests to tend to. In fact, there are compounds in the leaves and bark that the deer leave them alone, which is kind of nice. Some of you may be dealing with other things that don't have that luxury. I have noticed this winter, a caveat that I'll talk about, rabbits have been voracious in my backyard this year. I don't know, any steady people are noticing just that I've had them nip a few times at Pawpaw at the top, which blows my mind that they must be desperate to even take a nip. I've never seen that until this year. Have you noticed that, Aaron? All right.
I haven't yet, but I should look a little bit.
Well, I know there's always that exception, right? Like nothing messes with them. Well, yeah.
Do you put a fence around the small treated pawpaw?
You know, this year I have in some cases, and in my backyard, I have so many baby seedlings coming up everywhere. My spouse would love me to just get them out more because we have plenty. But sometimes I will put a cardboard, like paper towel tube around them. Works great if you're worried. But compared to most things won't chew on pawpaw, especially if they have other tastier options nearby. But I wouldn't say it requires a lot of that kind of protection. Now, when the fruit comes, that's a different story to like different strategies if you're worried about. But chewing the actual baby tree, I'm not so worried about.
I have that deer rub.
Oh,
That's
okay. No, that's a good point. They do say to plant 2 or more trees and have some genetic diversity is a good idea. And it's a strange, so pawpaw is a very ancient plant family, Ananaceae, and it's fly pollinated. So some of you who may know, the flowers smell like rotting fruit, like rotting meat to some degree. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like overwhelming, but if you get up and you're like, that's not, so they need flies. And some have theorized that some patches nearby that don't produce much fruit, that they're not sure if there's enough of the right fly. Some people go, including my wife, I find this funny, that when it's a time, she wants to set out like rotting things to attract the flies near the trees. So some people like hang pieces of meat or like something gross nearby. You can be that neighbor, right? And you're like, oh, thanks. What's going on here? But yeah, they are fly pollinated. And I've had great success with pollination, and I don't know if it has anything to do with that. But and again, they're a very attractive tree. You can make a nice border, whether you're in town here, just as an attractive ornamental tree, fruit or not. Botanically, so male and female flowers are on the same tree. I'm going to teach a class later in April on persimmon, and that's different. You know, there's male trees and female trees for persimmon. I'm not going to get into some complex biology, which frankly might be over some of your heads and mine too. But yes, male and female flowers are on the same tree, and the flowers are really beautiful. Yeah, I just wanted to say too that most years I find it interesting. Pawpaw trees, I'd say, are more, they've got a lot of wildness in them compared to some like, domesticated apple varieties but like the window of when flowers open and form and develop, it can be like over weeks. So some of the first to open, I find, often get nipped by the last frosts. And so they may put out tons of flowers, but it's like, okay, well, wave of one frost maybe at the end of April like wipes out some because they're already open. And so you might be only left with the ones that didn't form and open till the end. I think it was last year or 2 years. I think it was 2 years ago. We didn't have a frost in May. So all the flowers took and didn't get nipped. And I had just a huge bumper crop because they all they'll survive the frost. So I would say it's pretty common for frost to nip them. But they're adapted to our region. So it's not like it's a big deal. It's just like a matter of that kind of thins out the fruit crop, I think. And you can start to see the tiny fruits forming. It's really cute. They're these little like baby beans. And that's when you know that they pollinated. And first they might just be like a centimeter or smaller. And some people thin their clusters. Like pawpaws can be pretty heavy eventually. So that's kind of a whole nother topic. But if your tree's not big enough to support a lot of weight of fruit, might be worth thinning. Or maybe you're not thinking quite this way as you get into this. If you're going to grow a lot of the trees, you have to think about like how much, any tree takes water, it takes nutrients, it needs a certain base for its soil, of soil for its roots to expand. So will it have the umph to fill all those fruits out, is my point. You could thin down to just one or two and you're probably going to get bigger pawpaws. Or maybe you don't have time, or that's overwhelming or whatever. You can let them all fill out. They just might be smaller. But you can get a clump and it looks kind of cool. It almost looks like a bunch of bananas. I've had clumps, there's like 7 or 8. And I might like weigh the branch down. But their branches are pretty bendy, so they can actually kind of handle being bent better than some more rigid trees. So the leaves, I just wanted to show you this lighting in here is a little, at first they're pretty bright green yellow, the new green, but will go dark and a little more shiny. I think that's actually another pretty attractive aspect of them. And then when it rains, or water just drips off that point really nicely. The bark is smooth. Again, here's kind of a close-up, and there might be a little bit of bumps in there. And it is interesting if like raccoons or possums are trying to climb up later to get to fruit, they'll scratch the bark. I mean, it's pretty sensitive bark in some ways, but I'd be interested, Aaron, of like deer rubbing. Do they like the smoothness more? I don't.
I don't see it happen often. And they're just looking for something that's the right diameter.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, when I think of Jungle Book, like you can actually shake a pawpaw tree to knock the fruit down, right, when they're ripe. And so I like the bark being smooth too. It feels really primitive to just go up and shake a tree, but it's really neat looking bark. I actually really like the look, almost like a beech tree, just really much smaller diameter. As a tree grows, something I've learned to look for now are the fruit buds are noticeably distinct from the buds that are going to form leaves. And I'm going to pass some of these around. I'm going to send one your way, Nate. Like you can see in this picture, the fruit buds, they're round and fuzzy and like a ball. And that's going to be usually near the tips. And it won't be until a tree is several years old but it's exciting as you're starting to grow these, like, when's the first fruit bud going to come? This year, actually, I have from seed clump, like I plant clumps of seeds, and last year they took off. And so between some trees I planted years ago, I have one that caught up in probably 4 years that's probably 10 feet tall now, has a bunch of fruit buds on it this year. And I'm just amazed how fast, if you put a clump together, it's almost like they're competing. So one really competed well, and I'm just amazed that it's exciting when you see the first fruit buds. But they show up really well in the winter here against the snow. But I think this one right here is the first on the very, very tip. You can see it's kind of round. You pass these around. These are just the general buds that'll be leaves. Anyways, it's kind of this reddish, deep purple and kind of interesting. But about the fruit, for some of us, that's the real reason we're growing these. They're pretty widely ranging in size. So, you might have some that are like a little nugget, maybe like the size of an egg. might be on the small side. And some of them are the size of a mango and have some real weight to them. Tons of seeds inside. So again, I think that's another aspect of why, like, there's still some real wildness about pawpaws, like from a producer side or like a processor. Like there's some companies out there that are making like pawpaw ice cream, or they're processing. So if you think about breeding, some of the more cultivated varieties, they're trying to breed for fewer seeds. You know, like more fruit in a fruit, less seeds, because you don't eat the skin. So to process them, you know, it's not like processing an apple or a pear or something where there's not a whole lot. Like there's a lot of work to process pawpaws, but it's doable. And the fact that the seeds, you can save them, I think it's worth it. This year, we had so much fruit, we just froze pulp. And I put the pulp in ice cube trays because I realized if you just put it in a bucket or like a Tupperware, when you're using it, you may not use that much at a time. I put them in smoothies, or I put it, so you can scoop out the flesh and put it in something and freeze it. But
In processing,
yeah.
how do you separate the fruit from the skin and the seed? Like applesauce?
I wish it was summer so I could bring you one, Eileen, just to show you like if I have a ripe one in my hand, I might just cut a slit on one side. Now, Jerry Lehman, this guy that I went to see, awesome older guy, and he would just drive me around in his orchard. He's like, here's how you really eat a pawpaw. And he would just cut a little slit with his fingernail or his pocket knife, slurp the whole thing out. It was really disgusting to watch him do it. But then, you know, like get the seeds out and spit the seeds and then avoid the skin. So I'm not saying like if you cut it in half, you could just with a spoon scoop out the flesh and pick the seeds out. I don't think it's that bad, but if you're used to canning or some other processing, like think of it that like this is going to be a multi-hour endeavor unless you want to just do it a few at a time if they're taking their time. The longer you wait, the fruit gets bruised and like more blackened or brown. So if you've ever found them in the woods, sometimes they're real hard, really green. And most of them turn more like a banana. They kind of bruise. I personally like them on the earlier side. My wife really likes them further along and they get more like vanilla. I don't know. It can start to get bitter. There's an arc of how they change. I think some people say there's like a bourbon-ish hint to the vanilla-ish or something after a while, but some people have a preference range. And they'll get softer and sloppier. They're a very mushy fruit. And they will attract fruit flies. Like they'll come out of the woodwork. I don't even know where they come from, but they're just such a fragrant fruit once you have them. And I'm not against wildlife. So if you want to see wildlife, be growing some pawpaws and you'll bring in the possums and the squirrels and and we can all coexist, I think. So here's a zoom out. I didn't have a good zoom out from my yard, but this is from an Alabama extension. It's kind of a pyramid in this beautiful conical shape. And a lot of the branches go up. It's almost like a menorah or like a dancer holding like a skirt. It's just these really beautiful shape pattern of branches. Even when the leaves come off, it's a really neat shape. So as if I haven't already talked about my own experience, I'm going to show a little more detail. I planted 5 trees in, that was a typo, in 2014. I think I ordered them in 13, but I got them from Oikos, which is based in Kalamazoo. And I've realized that company, I think now only does seeds. They don't actually sell trees anymore. They used to sell trees. Has anybody ever gotten stuff from Oikos, Kalamazoo? It's a great company, but I don't know when they stopped doing trees, but that's where I got mine. And I think their genetic source was from some productive trees in Michigan. So they often get from wild sources when they've, I planted kind of a grid pattern in my backyard is really small for the record. So these fit in small spaces and I put them kind of in a staggered grid 10 feet apart. Have really sandy East Goshen soils. And it's pretty much full sun, but they did all right. I think I have some wind protection too. So it's not like a big open sunny field, just for the record. And unlike clay, sandy soil, you can amend with compost. Or I actually spread ashes if there's a fire, campfire kind of thing under trees. Ashes have a lot of good mineral nutrients in them that fruit trees need. So they have handled sandy soil quite well. They typically in the wild want a rich, loamy, well-drained, like a maple forest kind of earthy soil, but sand can be amended. And my trees first produced in 2020. It was actually 6 years later, and it wasn't a whole lot at first, and now it's a ton. And I've been saving seeds outside. So I get a half or a quart milk container. So if anybody gets, almond milk or regular milk or whatever, I open that up, I put compost or soil in it, and I put seeds in there, and I put it in the ground so that it overwinters. And it's a really easy way to like remember where they're going to come up next year rather than just some random spot. But they need to overwinter. The seeds need cold. They need to be stratified, we would say. Some people do that in the fridge. I think it's just as easy to do outside. And a fridge isn't going below freezing. It is giving you cold, but it's not this.
You're sticking in the ground where you want them to grow. I mean, you're not pulling them back up and then.
I am typically pulling them back up. It's funny though, like I feel a little bit of spirit of Jerry Lehman, this older guy. When I went to tour, he was like, yeah, this is the pile where I've just been spitting seeds for, I mean like full grown trees, and he's just like, I forgot about that pile. And now they're like mature. And I've had some of that in my own yard too, where I forgot to pull them up, and then they just competed. And some of them, like one of those that I forgot is putting on fruit buds this year and is 10 feet tall. So ideally I pull them out and then I thin them and then separate them, because the roots are pretty intense. They're very deep, long roots, right? But this is from my backyard. Just putting some wildflowers underneath. Again, it's just lovely. It's a nice backdrop with other things. So that's year 6. So that's the year they first fruited. That's the tree that fruited first. Shout out to my spouse, Adrienne, eating in her backyard. You can't actually see real well, it's picture quality, but the pawpaw is above her head, behind these grapes that we have arbored there. And yeah, so they can fit in a small space. If you have just a flower bed with bushes or something, like they can fit in a pretty small space. These trees are 9 years old behind us. And at that point, they were over 10 feet tall. But I don't think any of mine are over like 16 or 17 feet. Aren't the best pictures here, but they have a lovely yellow golden color in the fall too. Has anybody seen some that are just gorgeous around that? Yeah. I don't know that they actually get orange. I'd say it's more of a golden, yellow, brown. But that can look really neat against my neighbor's pine tree, for example, or if you have some reds, just tucking them in. If you have some artistry to like native planting. I think I was excited because this was maybe year 2 of me first having fruit. But it's really fun to watch the first fruits form when you're getting started. I put this in here to show these are wild harvested pawpaws, I believe from Michigan. And those are much greener and shinier than what I'm growing. And so there's a range out there. I'll talk about some varieties. Some of them stay kind of a dusty yellow or maybe even silvery, opaque kind of surface. And some of them are shinier and green. But a lot of the wild ones, I would say, I don't know, appear to me to be a little shinier than some of the more domestic. This is comparing to ones that I've had from my yard here. Then it depends on some varieties too. Yeah, so to the point about processing, that's a cut open, that's a nice pawpaw on the left. Again, pretty sloppy, but you can probably picture then how to scoop it out. eating them fresh. Adrian and I just eat 1 or 2 for dinner, the whole range of time that we have them in our house. So it just like generates a little pile of seeds every day. And we will put them in coffee grounds, moistened coffee grounds, the seeds. So what I passed around there, I make coffee in the morning, throw some grounds in there and keep them damp. But the seeds aren't going to keep well if they dry out. So it's actually important if you actually do want to germinate them, they stay moist. That's why too, just like putting them outside in a moisture container. I'll poke holes in the bottom so it drains and doesn't get waterlogged. But yeah, it's pretty easy to do that as you go. In a Ziploc bag can work. Maybe you just, sometimes I'll put them in the fridge in wet coffee grounds. But yeah, that's the processing. Really wish I could bring you a ripe one to be sharing, but maybe you can get a sense of how delicious that tastes. So again, I've been looking lately at the buds that are forming. And I did want to just say, this is a really, I don't know how you all are feeling. I love having a thaw and some warm weather. It is going to be a really interesting spring for trees with wild 60-degree warm-ups after the heart. And I imagine it's been cold enough for pawpaws that they shouldn't wake up too soon if we go back down soon. But like a lot of fruit trees, I worry about that number of hours over a certain temperature will make them form and open before we're done with our last frosts and freezes. So I'm excited to see some things. I'm like, all right, stay close. Don't do anything because it's still winter. I already kind of gave you some grower informations. I do want to say again, if they handle sand and well-drained, rich soils, digging them up is a pain, and the roots are so deep that you will cut off the roots. And sometimes you can handle that, but like they're not the best transplanted if they've gotten up to size. So if you are going to say seed save, like to your point, Aaron, about putting them in a container, I don't let them get too big because those roots are going to go so deep if the soil's nice and loose that it's probably better to extract them small so the whole root system really is kind of intact. I'm sure I'm learning too the sensitivities of ways to get it all. But that's kind of why I like to put it in a container too, because it makes the roots vertical and stay in one spot. So if you had one in your yard and you wanted to put it in a new spot, it's a real gamble whether you'll get the full root. You can grow them in deep shade, and I think a number of people ask me about that. They're not going to produce fruit probably as fast, and they may grow more slowly, but that's what they're used to. I mean, in the wild, they're deeply in the shade. And if you're going to grow them in your, how many of you are growing them in your yard? Cool. How many do you have total? 2? Okay. 6. And how does that, like, do you want more, or like is 2 versus 6 feel different in terms of, are they fruiting yet? Yeah. Oh. Okay. Yeah. What about you, Aaron? What's 6? Are they mature? Or are they?
I've got 5, and 2 of the flower for the first time last year. They didn't produce, but
They're getting there? Okay, cool. Yeah, once they are fruiting, I'm curious what people like, what's too many fruits? Or, how many trees do you want total?
it's also got a whole bunch of wild ones back into where we live that are very mature and producing.
Okay.
See how they interact.
Okay. I forgot to put this on here too, and I think it's a type of swallowtail. I just wanted to name that its specific food source is pawpaw. Somebody could probably even Google that for me, but it might be even a zebra swallowtail. I didn't know that until recently, and then I've started realizing I was seeing some butterflies that I have a lot from my backyard. So I know the city is promoting pollinator habitat. Totally think this has a great home as one of those attractors. And again, it pairs well with a lot of other good native plants.
What are they, at what stage are they attracted to the pawpaw? What are they?
I think they form their cocoons on the undersides of leaves, but Because yeah, sometimes I have seen some chewing, and again, the leaves are generally not touched by so many things. I'm like, it's got to be that. Again, so many of these insects and moths have evolved to eat and handle that chemical. Yeah, I did list a number of varieties here. So these are some common pawpaw varieties. Oh, did you find it, Nate? What is it?
Plant for the caterpillars of the zebra swallowtail.
Zebra swallowtail. Okay, I thought so. Cool. Yeah, so chalk up another reason why they're great. Yeah, Shenandoah, Allegheny, Sunflower, Susquehanna, PA Golden are some varieties. Again, Jerry Lehman. I interact with folks here at the city, and Indiana Fruit and Nut Growers Association is a very small, cool organization. I need to renew my membership, but Jerry was he was the pawpaw and persimmon guy in that group. They have their own kind of real old school printed only catalogs or newsletters they put out, and they list a lot of small nurseries that don't even have websites. But Jerry's legacy, in my opinion, is really some of his varieties have numbers. They're not even named, it's that he's bred. Those are starting to show up in some nurseries. And I'll try to share more of that information as I get it too, especially in Kentucky and Southern Indiana, maybe into like the upper South. But Kentucky State University, if you're not aware, they are the only land grant university in our country with a pawpaw department. I mean, they have pawpaw faculty, and they have a breeding program. I would love to make a field trip down there to see, because they have breeding programs. But their website, I'll put that at the end, has great resources. So I really trust them as a landing spot. You can prune pawpaw trees in the winter. I find I haven't had to do much pruning. For those of you who prune, compared to apples or pears, other fruit trees, lowest priority in my opinion. So yes, they can have some ingrowing. If you can see behind my post there, the pattern, the scaffolding, it's definitely a central leader type tree, and it wants that. Sometimes they can dangle. If you have a really heavy fruit crop, it can bend permanently the branches down. So I'll actually use like baling twine or other string to like hold the branches back up into a position that's not, because the weight, they're so bendy, they will eventually crack if it's too heavy. Yeah, maybe you can see another example from down low. Like I would prune off those really low branches in that one, but you could go back up to the first tier. I'm going to end with that. Just culinary uses. I named a number of them. Man, is it good in ice cream? Oh my goodness. Even if it's just the pulp put on top of vanilla ice cream or blended in. Cornbread. Nate, were you telling me that you did pawpaw cornbread? Really? Okay. Well, I would try that. I mean, yeah, it's fun to experiment, right? Sometimes textures, but the pulp is I can see it working in cornbread well. Smoothies, I do it, a little ice cube of frozen in my smoothie a lot. Puddings, if you go to the Pawpaw Festival, I've never been. It's in Athens, Ohio, this September. Every year, it's a pawpaw, and I know pawpaw beer is wildly loved there. I think there's pawpaw sweet goods and all kinds of things, though. And a lot of this is like old folk traditions, too, that, it's been a foraged food for eons. I have not dried it. I just want to say I know indigenous folks have a history of drying them. I haven't done that. I'm sure it could be done in a dehydrator, but freezing works well for my liking. We are going to be giving out and selling pawpaw this year. Obviously, we have a huge push to give away trees. It's something I've been starting from seed, and I would love if anybody here wants pawpaw to follow up with us. Teresa and I was like, February is a little early to be bringing trees in to give away, but we can get them to you. So if you have your information, let me know. I'd like to get more pawpaws out I also wanted to name some other classes. The Bushelcraft Farm is, and we partner a lot with classes. So we also partner with here with the city and also with Seed to Feed. So March 10th, if anybody knows Titus King, wonderful guy who builds bees, and bat houses. So he's offering to do a class at Seed to Feed at Church Community Services. And I think he'll have some finished products. We'll have some interns, some high schoolers there who are learning this too. But I'm hoping people can then imagine, like, what's it take to do this at home? He may have enough supplies that people can get one. Not sure how many he'll bring, but these are Tuesdays. And actually, Nate in front row here, we partnered on mushroom classes the last few years. I hope didn't have that nailed down with you yet, but you're in the front row. So hopefully we'll get a mushroom class. What? Well, okay. Yeah, I hope we can do. Yeah, okay. Well, I didn't want to make any promises there on the exact date yet, but we want to do it. We've already been prepping logs for mushrooms too. And on the 21st here, right, Teresa would be here still, this location? Okay, we'll do a persimmon class. And I will bring persimmon pudding or a pulp, which I grew up with. My grandmother made persimmon pudding for Thanksgiving every year and Christmas and all the things. So save the date. Yes, and there will be trees. And my experience with the persimmon trees we've gotten in the last few years have been nice and big. So I'm really excited that hopefully those are good giveaway trees. Here are the links. Please geek out. It's a really fun topic to learn more about Pawpaw. Again, I put a range of resources in there. I didn't go so deep into some nutritional information, but if that interests you, it is a really fascinatingly nutrient-dense crop. And again, it's so wild. I don't know that some of the more conventional university nutrition programs know that much about Pawpaw, honestly. But it's way better than bananas, for example. And with that, I'll take any questions, or we can just eat Pawpaw bread together.